This Duke basketball roster looks pretty good. A lot of people around the country now talking about the work that John Shire and company have done in the transfer portal. We're going to do that too. A brand new episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks for being here with us on Thursday, May 16th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop talking about everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. We talk a whole lot about the Duke basketball team each and every day, and we are available wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star rating and written review. The Apple Podcast platform in particular, the algorithms there love the 5-star written review. So thank you for taking the time to do that. We give 5-star Friday shout outs. So be a part of that and so much more. You can watch us on YouTube each and every day. Please hit that subscribe button to our YouTube channel. Like this video, share it with your friends, as your support means so much to us. Let me know if you're an everydayer for this program, because I got a whole lot of love for our everydayers who make this a part of your routine each and every day. Jordan Mann is here with us on the program from the Big J and Little J show. We're going to talk about the roster that Duke now has. It's looking pretty good. A lot of people are talking about it, so excited to welcome him on to the show. And again, follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. So without further ado, here he is. It's Jordan Mann with us. Back with that smile he's always got. And, man, we got to be fired up about this roster that Duke now has going into next season.
Yeah, man, it took long enough. I was over here. I was telling you before we started, I was waiting for the Sion news for about a week, so I was glad to see it was official. I'm excited about the roster. I know we're going to talk about, I see in the rundown right there, the 2 open scholarships and stuff. But with what Duke has right now, man, it's a roster that was made to support Cooper Flagg, and I think they found the 3 main pieces and 3 great pieces as well.
Let me give a social plug right out of the gates here, because we've been talking about Sion James for a while with you. And last week when the news broke on Friday going into the weekend that he would commit to Duke, on Monday of this week, he officially signed with the program. So he's on the team. It's going to happen. But at J-Man's Takes on X, you've put a video breakdown out there previously, and then my guy is so good that he puts out a screen recording video of changing the title of the video from a Duke transfer prospect to a player on the roster. Job well done, man. And I want people to go blow that video up so they can get a detailed breakdown of what type of player he is.
No, I appreciate it, JJ. Yeah, it is. I just checked on my Twitter. It is still my pinned tweet. So if you go on Twitter at J-Man's Takes, it's on my Twitter account, and then my YouTube, obviously, at J-Man_. It's somewhere on there as well.
You're able to change the title. He's a new guy that we need to have on the roster, but the content is still just as good. Absolutely love it. So what does it mean? I mean, big picture, his commitment in particular, what does this do to this basketball team?
I mean, you're getting a guy. I mean, look, Austin Rivers was in the news last week. We're talking about NBA guys playing in the NFL. Sion James might be one of those guys. The dude's massive. Like, those arms, the dude hasn't missed the weight room since he was 8 years old. So the guy's big. He's 6'6". But what you get from him is, I have it right here in my notes from the Big J and Little J show, was around the rim, 63% on 142 attempts. And that's graded out as the best percentage if you if you compare Jared McCain at 62% last year, Roach was 59, Proctor and Foster were 53 and 52 around the rim. So he's automatic. He's stepping in. He's being the best guard finisher around the rim for Duke in that backcourt. And catch and shoot, he was 47% from 3 as a spot-up shooter. So you're getting a guy that can finish around the rim as a big guard and catch and shoot when you're creating space. He can just be a corner pocket guy, 47% on catch and shoots. You love those numbers.
Space with the roster that Duke has coming in, I think, is a big buzzword that we'll probably hear a good bit about. It's going to translate a lot to winning. Why is that? Why are you, when you look at this roster for Duke basketball, why does spacing become such a big thing?
I mean, spacing's always key in every game or in basketball. And that was one thing that held Duke back in a lot of the losses they had was when Filipowski could not score or could not shoot threes well, which we talked about. It seems like a lot of games is 1 for 6 or 2 for 7 from three. When he can't shoot the three and then he's sharing the floor with Mark Mitchell, you're allowing 2 post bigs to just camp in the lane. Them camping in the lane doesn't allow previously Roach, McCain, Foster, and Proctor to get to the rim because it's clogged up. Creating space with guys that can shoot now on the perimeter and also attack the rim, you're going to see those numbers go up for both Proctor and Foster, as I said.
So with the roster that Duke has, the guards coming back, wanting to see them attack and drive more than they have in years past. With someone like Sion James, it opens up the spacing, right? But then tell me about the bigs that Duke has. When you look at Cooper Flagg or the 2 freshman centers coming into the fold, Malik Brown transferring in, Mason Gillis, what does the spacing dynamic kind of look like early? Again, these guys haven't even scrimmaged or played 5-on-5, and he runs it all yet on campus. But what do you think that will look like with this particular group of players?
Well, Cooper Flagg, if he plays the 3, like I think he will, he's out on the perimeter because he can catch and shoot. He can catch and get to the rim. He can catch and one-dribble pull up in the mid-range. Malik Brown's a better ball handler than Mark Mitchell. I compare them. Connor and I were going on a debate in the last episode, but I compare them more so than anything. And the difference is Malik Brown is a better ball handler to get to the rim. Like Mark Mitchell is more of a big body, try and bully you to get to this spot. Malik Brown's a little more shifty, so he can be on the perimeter and make you dance a little bit because he's going to finish at the rim. And then Malawak, he's going to be in the dunker spot. And I know he can shoot threes, but that's not really ideal for Duke. He's 7'1". Stay around the rim, be in the dunker spot. So when Proctor or Foster drives or Sion James, you throw the lob once you beat your man.
Where does Mason Gillis fit into this?
Oh,
the shooter that's ready for an open look?
Yeah, 3-and-D guy. Like I told Connor, again, we talked about, like, he was 47% from 3 for Purdue. I'm not expecting him to do that at Duke. I think 40%, 38 to 42%. That's all you need for a guy to come off the bench. But what really stood out to me for Mason Gillis was people want to say, well, he had Zach Edey. Zach Edey was double teamed. He shot 45% from 3 with Zach Edey off the court. So he can shoot. So if he can just come in, basically do the same numbers he had at Purdue, 6.5 points, 4 rebounds, but 2 or 3 of them are offensively every other game or once every 5 games, and gets steals and disrupts things on the defensive end, he does his job. And that's what Duke needs. Duke needs a consistent guy coming off the bench, and they didn't have that this past year. Mason Gillis provides that.
2 scholarships left open for the Duke basketball team. What could be the play there? And just what about this roster overall in general? Let's answer that question with Jordan Mann after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, it's Locked On Blue Devils here today, and it's brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, this is America's #1 sportsbook. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, of course, is America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's keep moving here on today's episode of the program. Again, I'm JJ Jackson. Jordan Mann is here with us on the show today. He's the host of the Big J and Little J show at J-Man's Takes on X. And Jordan, we're talking about this Duke basketball roster and their scholarship situation that they've got for this upcoming season. 2 open scholarships for the Blue Devils. What's kind of the play here, do you think?
Honestly, I think you might try and get 1 practice player. I think it'd be a practice. I don't know if it's going to be a guard or a big, but ideally it's just a guy that's going to come in and a senior that's just going to be a body in the practice room or practice gym, because minutes are already taken. And even if Duke doesn't land somebody, it's okay, because look, those 2 scholarships will carry over for next season. And then you can use those on 2 other portal guys or freshmen coming in. Like, you don't need to necessarily fill the scholarships just because you have 2 open ones. If it's smart to save them for next year to where you can get portal guys, that's great, because you don't want to get, JJ, a practice player, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a practice player. You don't want an underclassmen practice player. Now, all of a sudden, he has that scholarship for 2 years, and it's like a bad contract in the NBA. It's like, well, we just need you to take it for this season, not next season. So
right.
If it's not a senior that's going to leave after 1 year, then just leave it open to carry on to next season.
That's a good thought that I really hadn't spent much time thinking. I know one perspective that we've had in a lot of this is there are already 11 scholarship players on this team, right? There's only 1 basketball. There's only so many minutes in a game to hand out and distribute. But it's also fitting that point is made when we've got our scholarship chart up on the screen for those watching us on YouTube. It carries over into the next seasons, to your point there, Jordan. And then, all of a sudden, maybe you don't want that guy coming back going into the season.
Yeah. I mean, look, we have 11 guys right now, and you need 5-on-5 in practice. Because at the end of the day, like, you get 2 more, you're taking away practice reps from guys you need to have those reps for the game. So
right.
Honestly, 10 would be perfect, and then a couple walk-ons for when the guys get tired. 11's perfectly fine though too, but like you see 13 from this past year, like then you wonder why some of these guys, I know Reeves and Shoot redshirted, but they still practice when healthy, and that takes away some reps. So you need to keep as limited as possible to where these guys that are coming in are game ready. And look, Shire knows this team needs to be tested. Look at the schedule he's already had coming out for Duke. I mean, even getting George Mason at home, he's not playing around with this team. He's going to have his guys ready once Maluwak comes back, obviously, from the Olympics this summer too.
It's going to be fun to see them start to practice together, see the footage. As we will see likely Duke men's basketball. I don't know why they would change the formula so far in terms of content that they're sending out to the people. Last summer, they're sending out the practice highlight videos, and I'm out here charting the number of points each player scores in those settings. I'm ready for that to happen again, Jordan. I'm so excited to see how this team kind of gets put together, and for us to have some overreactions maybe at a little 5-on-5 practice. But in all seriousness, it's a good time.
You sound like NBA Twitter right now with Bronny James and the NBA draft practices right now. I see they scored 2 floaters yesterday, and people are going crazy, but he was 2 for 8 with 4 turnovers. I can just see you jotting down Caleb Foster hit 2 threes and tweeting about it.
Just to let absolutely. Those overreactions run wild. That's what we got to do at this time of year.
Absolutely. I mean, I do it. That's where the film breakdowns come from. So I'm being a hypocrite, but that's what makes this thing so great.
A really good roster for Duke, I think, going into the year. A lot of people nationally are talking about the job that John Shire did in the transfer portal, bringing in Sion James, Mason Gillis, and Malik Brown, also bringing in experience because, again, color-coded by their age and what year they will be in school. Duke's very young going into next season. And so here you are able to bring in a bunch of veterans after Jalen Blakes and Jeremy Roach, Ryan Young, guys who had been big vocal leaders and just practice day-to-day guys are no longer a part of the team. It's good to kind of get those experienced college basketball players into the picture as well.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And, I mean, the one key thing with these guys is they're good players. Not only are they good players, but they're better people. The one thing I've heard about all 3 guys is how great they are off the court. And what I mean by that is that locker room camaraderie is a real thing. And this past year's group wasn't the tightest. I mean, I think that kind of is well known now. And then you see everybody leaving. You're bringing in 3 guys that they would be captains anywhere else if they stayed at their respected schools. Instead, they're coming to Duke for 1 year. And look, we'll see, right? Like, we'll see what they can do as leaders. And I think even if they're not going to be officially captains, which obviously we'll talk about when the season gets way closer, but they're going to be voices of reason within the locker room and on the court for a young team that needs it.
Duke basketball with 11 scholarship players right now. Looks like the move could be to add a couple of practice players to kind of fill out that roster going into the season. I'm seeing pretty much the consensus right now, given the mass exodus for Duke basketball, in terms of 7 players entering the portal. Duke fell off a little bit, right? Because, Jordan, when we were looking at kind of the end of year, as soon as the national championship game buzzer sounds, Duke's right there in the top 3 spots going into next season's way too early rankings. And yes, they're way too early, but here we are in May. We're going to talk about things and start the conversation. Now, after all those players left, Duke's been dropped down a few spots. They've got these 3 transfers coming in, and now it feels as though Duke is kind of firmly in that top 5, top 7 range in terms of teams going into this next season with the roster we currently have. You think that's fair?
I think that's what I want. I never like when they have Duke. Like, I saw the way too early rankings right after, like the day after the national championship, and Duke had the best or second best odds to win the national championship. Yeah. And Duke had Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster back, like, and Cooper Flagg coming in. I'm like, we have 3 guys. What are we talking about? And so, like, yeah, I think that's the sweet spot for Duke, because it's not every year that Duke is the 5th to 7th range. Duke's always 1, 2, or 3, and then that just gives an unfair shot of unfair target on these guys' backs that are coming in and don't really know what they're getting themselves into. They're their first year at Duke. So this type of 5th to 7th, I'm perfectly fine with, because Duke is going to be good. But let these guys come to form. And, like I say all the time, JJ, to me, college basketball season doesn't start till January. So let these guys get tested early in November and December, and then just watch them grow, as Shire's done the last 2 years, growing throughout the season.
Let's keep this thing moving. It is a Thursday episode of Locked On Blue Devils here with our pal Jordan Mann. We'll take one more break, and then we'll start to wind down our conversation here as well on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Got to tell you about the Locked On Podcast Network, one of our newest ventures, Locked On Sports Today. It's obviously been one of our favorite podcasts within the company, giving you a breakdown of everything that has happened the previous night in the world of sports. Now let's talk about this, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the chaos that you could find on some of those network television stations. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We bring him back on in here. It's Jordan Mann. He's the host of the Big J and Little J show. He also has his Twitter account at JMan's Takes. He's got Duke football opinions. He's got a whole lot going on in his world, and we never know who you might run into or who's out there paying attention to the great work that J-Man is doing. Tell everybody about what you got going on these days, man.
Yeah, like I've already plugged, I guess, a couple of times, JJ, the Big J and Little J show. We just came out with it earlier this week with me and Connor, and talking about the offseason moves, the Duke win or lose this offseason, and then video breakdowns. I'm currently near the end of doing a scouting report, a film breakdown of Tyrese Proctor's game, his pros and cons, and then probably we'll try and do Caleb Foster and so on and so forth. So trying to create as much content as possible. So I appreciate you always having me on here. And shout out to my brother's barber, Tony Stokes. He's a listener of your show.
I love it.
Hayden texted me today, so I told him I'd give him love. And next time I'm home, I might need a cut because it's looking rough for me. So I appreciate you always having me on, man, and giving me this platform, because I love chopping up about Duke basketball.
Barber Tony, you're the man, my brother. Thank you for listening to Locked On Blue Devils, and thank you to all the other listeners out there. Again, each and every day, a special shout out to our everydayers. All right, so before we get out of here, I got to talk about those guys that are coming back for Duke basketball. We only got 2 of them at that guard spot, Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster. A lot of conversation about these 2 guys going into the next season. I think it's pivotal, though, Jordan, that they lead the way, that they stay healthy, and kind of really leave the imprint of what Duke will be, not only offensively, but on the defensive end of the floor as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing they both can do, they play good defense. And we already talked about the guys coming in, but they all can play really good defense too. So that's going to be Duke's identity next year. And you have to have a tough team to win it all. Like, that's why Dan Hurley's won back-to-back national championships. He's a tough coach that brings toughness. And Duke's going to be tough. Tyrese Proctor, I got to give him love for what he does defensively. I don't think it's talked about enough. Like, I've heard it some, but he really is. Like RJ Davis is coming back to UNC, AC Player of the Year. 2 of his worst games were against Duke because Tyrese Proctor had that assignment and did a fantastic job against him. So that's what I'm excited about is Junior Proctor leading the team vocally and leadership-wise on the court and off the court. And then Caleb Foster, I think he's going to take a jump from his freshman year to sophomore year, barring any setbacks due to injury.
So with those guys in particular, again, Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, the only 2 scholarship players coming back for Duke this next season. When we look at the offensive end of the floor, Proctor's always been the initiator throughout his career and has done a great job at that. Duke is just better when he's been running the point and getting them into sets. This past season as a sophomore, he averaged about 9 shot attempts per game. Do you think he's that aggressive? I mean, these are really early conversations for us to be having, but I'm curious right now, like what do the shot attempts kind of look like for Proctor? We want him to get more at the rim. Does that mean less outside shooting his 3, or how aggressive should he be with the shot?
I mean, honestly, as long as they're good looks, JJ, I really don't care. Like, if that's the one thing about him is like he shoots high percentage looks for the most part. Like I have it right here, like spot up shooter. He's 40% from 3. He's really good at pick and roll, ball handling, like whether kicking it or having his guy on his hip and pulling up from mid range. He's really good, and he's arguably the best ISO guard in the ACC. Like the clips I have of him that I'll post for his pros. I mean, when he goes one-on-one, like he had Ryan Dunn, who was the ACC's best defender, in a blender in an ISO situation. The shot goes in and out. I was watching it. I have like 357 clips that I have clipped up, JJ, that I've dropped down to like 20, by the way. So this is fresh in my mind. But he had Ryan Dunn dancing. And then my favorite play that he had of the season, which it sucks that it's against Louisville, who's the worst team in the ACC, but that one moment where he can't lose the guy, and then the guy gets up, starts clapping in his face. Louisville fans are on their feet, and he just hits a dagger, makes him dance, hits a dagger 3. Like that's the Proctor that I need consistently at Duke next season to have that personality and have that chip on his shoulder every game. And I think he will do that regardless of 9 shots a game, 5 shots a game, or 12 shots a game.
I think personality is the biggest thing. Absolutely. Like that moxie that he can play with, that swagger, whatever words you want to throw out there for Proctor. Bring it all back. We want all of it. Lead the way, young man. Lead the way. So Foster, as a freshman, averaged 6 shots per game. What do you think for next year?
I think 6 shots is probably – I like 6 shots for him. I think even a little bit more maybe, as long as they're high percentage. The things that cannot happen with those 2 guys, it shocked me when you said Proctor averaged 9 shots a game because, you know, those 2 guys would – Proctor or Foster, rather, would have like 15, and then he'll have a 0-burger and a 3-burger, and then – he'll come back and have 12. And then Proctor kind of had the same thing. Those guys have to be consistent with 8 points per game at least in a game rather than 14 points down to 4 points, then 6 points back to 12 points. They have to be the 8 points per game minimum.
Too much variation. Yeah.
Correct. Yes, too much variation. Yeah, very volatile.
And so from a shot attempts perspective, though, for Foster, does that look like more, you think, or – what do you think?
I think maybe 6 to 8, like, because I'm curious to know how the minutes go with them. Because Sion's going to play. Like Sion, he's going to play at least 20 minutes, 18 to 22 minutes. The whole minutes thing in May doesn't really make sense, but I always do it. I do this.
What we got to do, man. That's what we got to do.
I know people want to hear it, but like I do think he's going to have a role. So maybe 6 is right where Foster is right now for me, but, you know, he has a really strong summer. That 6 could be 10 for all I know.
Sound off in the comments down below. How many shots per game do you want to see Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster taking for Duke going into next season? Because they will lead the way for the Duke basketball team. Cooper Flagg is the man. Excited to see him get started on his college basketball journey. But with all that being said, Jordan, we still need those upperclassmen and those guys who have worn the Duke jersey before to get out there on the front and take us to the promised land, man.
Yeah, they've been places that these freshmen haven't been. And Mason Gillis has been in places that nobody else has been for Duke basketball. And he might be the hungriest guy on the roster. He lost in the national championship game. And I got told Connor, he has witnessed losing in the first round, being one of the worst upsets in March Madness history, to losing in the national championship game. So, like, I think he might have the biggest chip on the shoulder in that locker room, and he's going to set the standard high in that locker room. Like, hey, like, we're going to win this for me. Like I've been upset. I've been made fun of. And then we lost the national championship game. I want to win a championship before I leave. And so I think he's going to set the tone.
Let's go do the thing. Excited to see this season come into play, and excited to have many more conversations with you, Jordan, in the days and weeks to come. Thanks for stopping by here on the show once again, my friend.
It's always a pleasure, JJ. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Jordan Mann joining us here on the program as he does each and every week. And you never know who's listening to the show. Once again, a shout out to Barber Tony out there for making Locked On Blue Devils a part of your day. And thank you to everyone else. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X at @LO_Blue Devils. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.